Well, if you remember, we had started with the divine plan, and it is from Sri Aurobindo's SABCL volume 17 actually. In fact, the pages from 27 to 31, these are the pages where Sri Aurobindo gives a diagram of all the with all the details of the divine plan. Now, what we discussed last time was the question of the absolute. That means, what is the divine reality? Because this divine reality is beyond time manifestation. So I will get back to the board again to just give you a little recap of what we had done, and then I'll take you forward. So this is the what he calls here the self-contained absolute. Now, of this self-contained absolute, we had given the first absolute. The first absolute, he calls it as the Tat. Now, what is the Tat? Is given in this book here. The absolute transcendent, the supreme, Paratpara, containing all, limited by nothing. So this is the transcendental, the absolute transcendent. That is the supreme. That means it is that unmanifest reality.
What is
Transcendent. Transcendental. So you see, in Indian philosophy we have these two aspects: the divine before manifestation and the divine after manifestation. So who would know about the divine before manifestation? None. So we just call him Tat. Don't give it any character, any characteristics, any personality, any names. Actually, Tat is nothing but, in English, it's just that. So we don't know anything about it. But what we call here is this aspect of the unmanifest. The Tat is that unmanifest. That is the first absolute. And then now comes the creation with the second absolute. He would call it the Sachchitananda. Well, we have done that many a time, so you know it by now. Existence, consciousness, and bliss. But while I am here, let me explain something more which will be easier later on, because otherwise I have to repeat this. Here, there is another notion called or named as Sat, Chit, Tapas and Ananda. In fact, in this book he would tell that the mother is the consciousness force. Tapas is the force, is the energy. So in Sri Aurobindo, or later on with the Upanishads, we have Sat, Chit, Tapas and Ananda. Well, I'll just give you the hint there. Please remember, it is the consciousness force. That is in Sri Aurobindo. In the Upanishads, in the Upanishads, we have only Sat, Chit and Ananda. But Sri Aurobindo and the Tantras will add the next notion of the tapas, that is the force, the energy, the creatrix, whatever you want to call, which later on becomes the mother. So here he would describe this, the Satchitananda as the supreme self-contained absolute. I mean, these are all very important words. Supreme self-contained. This is unmanifest. This is the possibility of manifestation is there. It's like the garbha, the womb of creation. Because the word the mother occurs here. So, the book that we see of this, the mother here, alludes to the same mother. So, I want you to understand the ontological position of the mother. It is only then we will be able to appreciate that this mother incarnating as the individual Mira Alfasa. So you can imagine what is that eternity, that timelessness which has manifest in time and as Mira Alfasa with an individual body. So that is the great descent, if you can call it. So that's why I want you to understand philosophically, ontologically, although last time I gave you some concept of the mother according to the Indian concept and the concepts in different cultures, at least in Sri Aurobindo, the position of the mother is this. So what does it mean? She belongs basically to the self-contained absolute. And of course, we saw last time the definitions that we get here. Tat is that absolute transcendent. Sachchitananda, here we said Ananda uniting Sat and Chit, that's existence, consciousness and Ananda. And Aditi is the indivisible consciousness force and Ananda of the Supreme. So you can see the definition is that she is the consciousness, force and Ananda. So she is this. So, but what is the difference, you may say, between the second absolute and the third absolute? She is the one who is the creatrix, who brings forth this Sat. In fact, as I told you, there is a phrase in this book, from the womb of the unknown, she brings forward this Sat into this world, or becomes this world. That's why she is even called the mediatrix, the one who mediates between the Tat and the temporal manifestation. That's why she is even called the golden bridge between the Tat, the first absolute, and the temporal manifestation. So all that we see in Savitri applies to this mother. So that is the position, and today I will take up the second one, because here we had also discussed about the fourth absolute, which is that of Parameshvara and Parameshwari. This is according to the Gita, this is according to the Tantra. In Tantra, Parameshwari is the Supreme. In the Gita, Parameshvara, or there's another word, those of you know Gita, it's called the Purushottama. Now, those of you who are not attuned to Indian philosophy, you may wonder why all these complications, so many names, whereas in other philosophies it is so very simple. There's one Spirit and the Holy Ghost, and then there's a creation, and then the Son of God, and the rest is a simple thing. Well, in India, of course, our rishis have gone into great experience and analyzed it. You see, it is not the question of, as I said, it's a magic wand of a creation. That is the beauty of Indian philosophy. It is complex in the beginning, it's true. But look at the step-by-step analysis of each state. Well, now I will have a word about this before I come to the creation aspect. This Parameshwara or Purushottama or Tantra and Tantra, Parameshwari. Last time I had said it is the he and she aspects. But he and she is not male and female as we would imagine on the human level. It is the question of the Purushottama, Purusha and Prakriti. It is again a question of consciousness and force. This is the consciousness and this is the executrix. So the division is not between male and female or he and she. For our human language we use he and she, etc. But philosophically it is the consciousness and the force, which is there in all of us. Even at our own human level, we have these two parts in each one of us. There is a force that executes, that becomes, and there is the being that is watching, that is deciding, that is ordering, and there is a becoming that happens. So if you understand it that way, it's better. Instead of saying he and she, immediately you will say, oh, that means there is a male and female. It's not the male and female. It is the consciousness and the executive force. Now a word here about Tantra, certainly Sri Aurobindo does bring in this in order to make it easy perhaps for us to understand. In the Vedas and the Upanishads and the Gita, we have basically, that is the Vedas, Upanishad and the Gita. We have here the concept of Brahman, Purushottama, or what we said, the Parameshwara, whatever. This concept is predominant in the Vedas, Upanishads and the Gita. Predominant in the sense they do not almost recognize the mother or the force or the Shakti. I did mention last time that the Vedas speaks about Aditi maybe 6 to 8 times in the entire Vedas. They have the concept, but they never gave it an importance. So, in Indian culture, in that Vedic age, the whole focus was on realization of the self, realization of the Brahman, realization of the Atman. So for all that, the process that was given was meditation. So the means for attaining the Brahman was the process of meditation. So for the first thousands of years, 4,000 to 5,000 years, we had only the meditation aspect which was predominant. But afterwards, as against this tendency, meditation means it was intellectual, rational analysis, mental consciousness. So that we can say is the consciousness of the mind. But in India, this has been, Sri Aurobindo would always mention this in his Foundations of Indian Culture, that India went to an extreme in one line, be it philosophy, be it art, be it psychology, sociology, anything. Then it sees quite an end there, and then it comes back and goes to the other end. is never satisfied having reached one end. He says that's the end and finito. There is, he says, they say, there must be something else, and another dimension, another aspect of the divine. So what happened after this tendency? There was what we have, the Tantra. Tantra took us on a different channel completely. They said, no, it is not the mind alone which is important. There is the emotion, the heart, and the body. They said, why isn't that we are not looking after the body and the heart of the human being? So they specifically, purposefully, they took to the other aspects of the human being, and they said heart and body are as important, and they could be the means of realizing the supreme reality. And not only that, when it comes to the lower level, the human level, Vedas and Upanishads, if they concentrated on the mental aspect or the man aspect, Tantra said we will insist on the heart and the woman aspect. So there was an absolute swing from man to woman, from mind to the heart, from the intellect to the emotion. So Tantra developed its own science, its own yoga, and we said no, our importance is the woman, is the Shakti, is the mother. So thanks to the Tantra, that we had a swing from Brahman to the mother, to the Aditi. So Aditi, who was only a name mentioned there, becomes the focus point of Tantra. So even in Tantra, they said if the Vedas and the Upanishads and the Gita, they speak about higher qualities of the human being, the meditation aspect, the higher being, all the upper levels so called. Tantra says man is not just the upper levels, the higher consciousness. He has also the lower vital, the lower physical, the lower impulses, even going to the lowest impulse called the sex impulse. He says if God has created all this, they have a meaning. Why should we neglect those parts? Can we not purify them and use them also for achieving the higher consciousness? So it was a very beautiful, systematic, purposeful swing from the mind to the heart, from man to the woman, from the intellect to the emotion. So that's how we have a kind of a counterbalance between the Vedas and the Tantra. And at present I am going through a book on Kashmir Shaivism, and I found it very interesting that there is the third trend, the Kashmiri Shaivism, or we can call it Shaivism itself, which has been a wonderful synthesis between the Vedas and the Tantra. I would perhaps dare say Shaivism has been a precursor to Sri Aurobindo in its essential aspects. Of course, Sri Aurobindo brings in the new concept of the supermind and the supramental realization and transformation. Apart from this concept of the transformation of the supermind, you find tremendous similarities between Shaivism and Sri Aurobindo. If you are not given the name, you would think it is Sri Aurobindo who is speaking that. That is the fundamental synthesis. So Shaivism brings in the synthesis between Vedas and Tantra. So you see, that is again a beautiful movement in Indian philosophy. There are two extremes and then there is a synthesis. And then the same thing happened when Gita came. Gita also says Vedas and Upanishads, they concentrated too much on the mind. And Gita brings in the emotional level, the bhakti aspect, and the works aspect, the karma. It's not just jnana, it's not just the mind. So Gita tries to bring in another kind of synthesis between the mind and the heart, between jnana yoga and karma yoga and bhakti yoga. And Sri Aurobindo now is that grand master of synthesis who brings in Vedas, Upanishads, Gita, Tantra, and all that. So we see Indian philosophy move from one synthesis to another synthesis, a greater synthesis. So today if we have Sri Aurobindo synthesis of yoga, you will find all these elements. That's why when I give you all that, it will also help you to understand our own synthesis of yoga or any other works of Sri Aurobindo. Because it becomes richer, your understanding becomes richer if you know all this basics of Indian philosophy. Now coming back, so I have taken you from this idea of Tantra. So this is where Parameshwari, the female energy, comes into focus, the Tantra. But at this level, we must remember, Sri Aurobindo mentions there more to give us a clarification, but in his absolutes, there is no Tantra and Gita at that time. We cannot really talk about that on that level of the triple absolute. But I brought in because Sri Aurobindo mentions here the name Parameshwara of the Gita and Parameshwari of the Tantra. So we have basically, well, he gives it that way, Tat, Sat and Sachchidananda and the Aditi, and we have Parameshwari and Parameshwara. Yeah. So we have come till here. Now we begin the eternal manifestation or eternal time. You see, we are not yet coming to the manifestation, remember. It's still beyond time. It calls it the, we have in Sri Aurobindo, as I was telling you, the concepts of timeless, eternity, and time eternity. Well, those are the concepts that we are applying here. This is the timeless eternity, is this creation manifestation in eternal time. Now, what is that? It is definitely very complex, but if you want to understand the life divine and also a little bit of this book, The Mother, you need to get these basic ideas clear. Now, because he moves on from this to the next level, where he brings in the manifestation in eternal time, he says, what does this mean, manifested in eternal time? Now, this is basically, if you understand this, if you remember this, what is the breakup of Satchitananda? We said Sat, Chit, Tapas and Ananda. So this eternal manifestation or manifestation in eternal time is composed of 4 worlds, which he calls, or he not only Satyaloka, Chitloka, Tapoloka and Anandaloka. Well, you know, towards the end, even the Vedas also mention about this. When we say evolution is eternal, Vedas also mention that there is evolution beyond Supermind. Evolution doesn't stop with Supermind at all. There are this, he says, there are worlds beyond the Supermind. See, till now Supermind has not even come into picture. That's what you should understand. Supermind, which is supposed to be the creatrix, creator of this universe, hasn't yet come into the picture of this divine plan. It will come later. Now, what's happening? From this principle of consciousness, Parameshwara and Parameshwari, there begin the 4 lokas, the 4 worlds. These are the 4 worlds. That means of each aspect, In each of these worlds, loka is the world, the dominant principle is that of Sat or Chit or Tapas or Ananda. In fact, if you are interested, he gives volume 12, page 122. Well, I have explained this just in one sentence. He says the same thing, a short description. He is explaining the higher worlds as we get them in Isha Upanishad and the Vedas. When tapas or energy of self-conscience dwells upon Sat or pure existence as its basis, the result is Satya Loka or world of true existence. When tapas dwells upon active power of Chit as its basis, the result is Tapoloka or the world of energy of self-conscience. When tapas dwells upon active delight of being as its basis, the result is Janaloka or creative delight. Well, here we have mentioned, but in this description, Sri Aurobindo mentions only about one world, that is, he says the Satyaloka, he calls this as the Tapoloka, and he calls this another name Janaloka, another name for the world of delight. However, we just get the essence of it, because later we are going to get into the details. Let me first finish the divine plan. So, after this, now just remember, this is a continuation of what I will be drawing here. So, after this eternal time, now comes, as he puts it in the next plan sheet, which is that means after this, next is the divine gnosis. Divine gnosis, where for the first time something of the supermind coming in, and with the divine gnosis begins the temporal manifestation. So, what is the whole idea? We had the Sat, Chit, Ananda, and we had the Tat, Sachchitananda, the mother, and then we had this eternal time where the mother is creating these four lokas or the four worlds. After that, there is the birth of the divine gnosis or the supermind. To give you another diagram, it is like this. What Sri Aurobindo calls the upper hemisphere. This upper hemisphere is actually, if I can put it again, now this is the upper hemisphere and this is the lower hemisphere. Now, in this upper hemisphere, whatever we have done till now is here. Tat, Sat, Aditi, and the four worlds, Satyaloka, Tapoloka, and Anandaloka. Then comes the supermind, the divine gnosis or the supermind. So, this is the position of supermind in the whole ontological explanation of Sri Aurobindo's view of the creation. So, we have what we will call the higher worlds, or this is the eternal time, or what we say eternal time manifestation, or timeless eternity, whatever we want to call. So, this is the timeless eternity called the upper hemisphere. Now, there comes in, again this is all the creation of the Aditi. Remember, why we are doing this is to understand what is the work of the Aditi. She has created these 3 or 4 worlds, and then she brings forth or brings forth me, she becomes herself Supermind, or the other word is Vijnanamaya Shakti. Vijnana refers to the Supermind. And towards the end of this chapter of the book, actually, he would call the mother as the supramental Mahashakti. This is what is really of great revelation to us, that this Aditi, she becomes the supramental Mahashakti, and it is this supramental Mahashakti who comes into the physical as the Mera Alphasa. So, who is this mother at present? She is basically the supramental Mahashakti. And then comes here, the first thing is the overmind. So, the highest consciousness of the lower atmosphere is the overmind. So, these are the two hemispheres, we distinctly divide them, and that is where the supermind is the bridge between the upper hemisphere and the lower hemisphere, or the higher hemisphere and the lower hemisphere. That's why this consciousness is so very crucial, because it is the bridging consciousness. Once one reaches the supermind, then only one enters the higher or the upper hemisphere. And at that level, evolution, now if you ask the question, where does evolution go? From supermind, it goes into Ananda Loka, from there Tapo Loka, then to Satya Loka. Loka means worlds. So again there are the infinite number of worlds between these. So there is no question of a stopping of the evolution, it goes on and on. Now coming back to our own question here. So when we come to the lower hemisphere, the first thing that we get is the overmind. And of overmind or Maya, which is called in the Vedas, overmind takes all truth that comes down to it from the supermind, but sets up each truth as a separate force and idea capable of conflicting with the others as well as cooperating with them. So the troubles of this world began long back with overmind. So there is nothing new, it is not an Auroville or ashram, it belongs long back. So we should realize that we have nothing to do with the problems here, we have our origin somewhere else. Because it has taken all the truth from supermind, but it puts it, but sets up each truth as a separate force. So each religion, each Godhead, each thought, each concept has a truth or is true because it comes from supermind. But on the level of the supermind, all these religions and all these concepts were united, single. There is no division. But here, there is division, possibility of cooperation and conflict. So each overmental being has his own world. Each force has its own play and throws itself out to realize its own fulfillment in the cosmic play. All is possible. And from this separative seat of conflicting and even mutually negating possibilities comes to, as soon as mind, life and matter are thrown out into the play, the possibility of ignorance, unconsciousness, falsehood, death and suffering. So, as soon as the overmental consciousness appears, every truth becomes a group of ideas. This oneness is divided into groups. So we may take it on the religious level, we may call it Hinduism or Christianity and Islam, and each one becomes a large collective mass of consciousness. So there could be collaboration between the two, between each one of them, or there could be conflict in each one of them. Both the possibilities are there. But once that possibility of division begins, then you see what happens. After that, of course, as we said, normally the rest is history. Once overmind comes, what began there at overmind, it goes to the different levels of the intuition, illumine, higher mind, etc. Comes the great mind. And the mind is like a sieve. I don't know if some of my colleagues know what the sieve, Indians know what it is. You know what a sieve is? Yeah. What happens in the sieve? Or you know how you make muruku? You must be knowing. Muruku, you know what is muruku, that long thing which is very, very tasty. So you put that atta, the dough in that thing and you press it, that one single dough, lump of dough comes out as so many murukus, separate. And overmind and mind is exactly that. What was more or less one, when it comes to the mind, the murukus come out, and that is each one of us, each one muruku. We are all broken up pieces of the singular consciousness. So what are we doing? We are all separate. Each one we have a name and a form and an ego, and then there is a conflict and there is a division and there is a battle between all of us. What started as a possibility, as Sri Aurobindo puts it, becomes an absolute division there. So the beginning of all our conflicts is the overmind. So the sense of possibility becomes an absolute reality in mind. So mentally we are all divided. But creation says, no, I think that's not yet enough divided. Mentally we can say, oh, we all belong to Auroville, so we are all one and ideal of human unity. So in a moment of residence committee, we may all have say, hey, we are one principle. So creation said, okay, I want to break you down, brings in life and brings in the body and brings in matter and brings in the atomic cell. So with this atom and cell, all is broken down for good. There is no chance of further division. So what began as overmind becomes an atomic reality of absolute division, physical division. You see, mentally we may all say we are Aurovillians, and emotionally we may get to the gathering and say, hey, no, we should stand for Auroville, we should stand for India, we are all blah, blah, blah. But on the physical level, we cannot be one. My body, your body, it can never be one. So what started as kind of a little fun ended up in a bad joke, the physical reality of absolute separation. So matter is the fulfillment of the divine involution, where division became absolute. So then the Supreme Sachchidananda said, wow, now I am happy. I am divided, there is no question of unity anymore. Physically I will become atomic, and then the body comes in, so we are physically ununitable. So that's the beginning and the end. So that's where the story began. That's the time manifestation. I hope you are not losing the track of what I am saying. What we started saying was the coming down of the supermind here, the upper hemisphere, the supermind, and the lower hemisphere. And the supermind is mentioned in the Veda as Satyam, Ritam, Brihat. There is the truth, the rhythm, and the vastness. Vastness. That means supermind is a truth that is manifesting in the vastness according to a particular rhythm. It is not haphazard or perchance. There is a particular order, a particular logic. So that is what is called a rhythm. So, well, that's a mention there, and then we have seen here in the lower hemisphere, overmind ends up in the inconscient. Now that is, you may say, metaphysics, but what has that got to do with our subject of the mother? You see, in this divine plan, Sri Aurobindo kind of does not go beyond the description of the mother at this level. He stops at that, and then in the overmind, etc., there is no talk of the mother or what is her role. That's very interesting. Why there is no role of overmind to all the other levels till it comes to the level of the mind and man. Where the division has taken place. I mean, we say mind and man, I include the physical also. Now, the mother appears again at this level. You see, she is here. Up until then, we have seen we have absolute 1, absolute 2, absolute 3, then the different worlds, then the supermind, and then only at the level of the man, she comes in again. What happened in all these levels? She is not there as a strong manifestation. She comes back as a manifestation only here. That's why we call her the avatar, means the incarnation or coming down, the descent. So, this is the concept of the mother, the very title of the book before we really take up different aspects. I wanted to understand the ontological position. So when Sri Aurobindo would bring in later on that the mother is one, but she has descended into this ignorance is this. So the word descended, now you understand the meaning of the word descended. From this level she comes. She doesn't come from here. She is Aditi here on the third level we have seen. But from this Aditi, there is the intervening supramental consciousness. So she is this Shakti, and then from this level she descends. So the word descent connotes from the supramental Mahashakti. So if we understand this concept of the mother now, you have philosophic understanding of the levels. So we have covered this divine plan, and I think I can move on to the next paragraph. So when we said about the first sentence of the paragraph itself, the 4 powers of the mother. Now when we are talking about the 4 powers, last time I mentioned the 4 powers that we have spoken of, that is, we have come to know about the Maheshwari, Mahakali, Mahalakshmi and Mahasaraswati. But there is again an interesting parallel here. Sri Aurobindo in one of his letters, is not there in any one of his books, but in one of the letters he mentions that this is an idea that we get in our own Puranas. But he does give it a recognition and kind of a qualification, if I can say. And that is what is interesting. We have, as per our knowledge, we will look into that in detail. Maheshwari, Mahakali, Mahalakshmi and Mahasaraswati. Their qualities, we'll get the details. But this is on the level of the Shakti, or what we said last time, Parameshwari. Now we also said there is the other side is the Parameshwara, the consciousness aspect, whereas this is the energy, force, etc. This is the consciousness. And remember this thing, this is the general rhythm of manifestation, that wherever there is Prakriti or energy, there must be a form of consciousness. There cannot be consciousness without energy, or there cannot be energy without consciousness. What does it mean? Well, the first one, the one that is very close to Maheshwari, is called Sri Krishna. And the second one is Balarama. Third is Pradyumna. And fourth is Aniruddha. Well, some of you may know our Puranas and see these are the names of Krishna, and Balarama his brother, and Pradyumna his son, etc. But these are not the Puranas, names of the Puranas. Like we have these goddesses also in Indian mythology, but we are not alluding to this. But in Puranas and in Sri Aurobindo, it's very interesting to see, he would call this Sri Krishna might and wisdom. He calls Balarama power and strength, the same qualities that Mahakali has. He is also having power and strength. Maheshwari, it is the same wisdom, and Sri Krishna. And Pradyumna is sweetness and delight. It's the same thing that we will see later when we take up the description. The same thing comes here, power and wisdom. I mean, it's amazing to see the same qualities on both sides. This is bodily enjoyment and reason. Why am I bringing in this? Not because of the Puranas, but to insist that always Parameshwara and Parameshwari, they manifest in different forms in this creation. There's never any question of only Shakti coming in. There is always the Purusha who also manifests in different forms. So there is the consciousness aspect, or the He aspect, to make it simple, the He aspect and the She aspect. But they represent the same powers as we see in this four. And the last important thing is, before I take up the book, there is this question of, there is a further description in Sri Aurobindo which says, Sri Krishna, he has divine knowledge, and of course we have seen Balarama has strength, wrath, guided by Sri Krishna. Third one, Pradyumna, gives himself to men and buys their love in exchange. Universal philanthropist, he is a sweet and throbbing heart in things. The Kamin, the Bhogin, the scientist, user of material means, democrat, leveler, is the Aniruddha. Well, I am not explaining that. What is important is, I was really struck to see that the first one is the Satya Yuga. That might interest you here. Satya Yuga. This is Treta, this is Dwapara, and this is Kali. And the thing that touched me most is when Sri Aurobindo writes, once in each Chatur Yuga, they come down together, the Chatur Vyuha, the fourfold effective power. So once in each of these yugas, they come together. Now this is where I want to refer you to. the mother. You see, what Sri Aurobindo describes in the Puranas tell us is in each yuga, one of these deities is predominating. It's very interesting to see the history from this angle. If you want to see the history of human evolution, you will see that every civilization has Maheshwari first. Be it the Greek or the Romans or the Indians or the Chinese or the Egyptian, anywhere. It is a Maheshwari aspect, the wisdom aspect. You call it the Greek Apollos, there is the Chinese thing. The wisdom aspect comes first in every civilization. And then if you see history, it is always the next was taken up by power, where the kingdoms and the empires and the emperors and the kingdoms and the kings, they sprout up. And there is always the war. So there is also what is happening according to the Indian system of classification. First is the Brahmin. Then comes the Kshatriya. Kshatriya is represented by Balarama power or Mahakali. I mean, this is a period that you can divide history into 4 sections. Mahakali, Maheshwari, Mahakali. And then the whole of the world, maybe the different periods, a little bit 100 years, 50 years plus minus, you have the age of Mahalakshmi, that is the age of the Vaishya, the age of the money, the age of the industrial revolution, the age of technology that comes in. So there is the question of this welfare, human welfare, the scientific discoveries. That is the power of the Vaishya. That means the power of Lakshmi, where she spreads equality on material level. And today we are at the level of Mahasaraswati. Mahasaraswati is perfection in work. So we are all having, of course, Aniruddha. I was again surprised to see the description of bodily enjoyment. And today you cannot describe the present generation, not generations, by this fact that we are all into bodily enjoyment. I mean, it's so amazing to see that they have predicted these 4 stages, so we should not be surprised that, oh, what is there happening? There's violence and sex and love and all that. As I said already, the 4th level is the bodily enjoyment and reason. So let's not be thinking we are great rationalistic people and all that, fine. But it has come as a process of evolution which was already foreseen. So these are the 4 stages of human evolution from the point of view of civilizational history. And obviously, we are in all these things, perfection in work, technology, bodily enjoyment, rationalism, Kali Yuga. So they are all together. But what does it show? That there is, he says, once in this Chaturyuga, once in each Chaturyuga, they come down together. Who is that they? And this is the raison d'etre of Mother and Sri Aurobindo. That in this Kali Yuga, which Sri Aurobindo says ended in 1907, once at the end of this, all the 4 come together in one form. So no doubt the Mother represents these 4 powers. So her coming is not accidental. It is not just a question of, yuge, what the Gita says, from age to age the avatar comes in. There all have been different avatars from yuge, from age to age whenever there was adharma. But the coming of the Mother and Sri Aurobindo are not according to what the Gita says about from age to age the avatar comes in. It is the inevitable coming in of all the 4 aspects of the divine in one form at the end of the Chaturyuga, that we are end of the Kali Yuga, and there comes in the Mother, there comes in Sri Aurobindo with wisdom and power and delight and rationalism, reason at its best in the life divine. So you see, now I understand why the twin avatars, as we have called them, the dual avatars. So they have come because it's the end of the 4 yugas. Sri Aurobindo did not come at the end of the 3rd yuga, or the mother did not come at the end of Balaram and the 2nd yuga. After all the 4 yugas have been crossed over, that all the 4 manifest in a single body. And that is the mother, and that is Sri Aurobindo. And another message that we get from out of this, he says 1907 Kali Yuga ended, and there is a transition of 100 years, he says. So we are about the transition time now, 2012, plus minus 5 years. But then the thing is, after this begins the recycle, the higher cycle of the Satya Yuga begins here. So now after this, the spiral, the first spiral has gone to the second spiral, and we are now on the second spiral, just at the beginning. The Kali Yuga is finished, and now we have to go through the spiral here. That means the coming of the Satya Yuga is an evolutionary process. So we are here in this time of transition. Going from Kali Yuga to Satya Yuga is obviously the darkest period, the most dangerous period, and a period where suffering, the Holocaust, is extreme. But it is also the period that gives us a greater dawn, the possibility of a higher dawn. You see, like Savitri is interestingly starts with that. It was the hour before the gods awake, the first dawn when there was the Sri Krishna and the beginning of creation itself. And then the last line of Savitri says, we go towards a higher dawn. The higher dawn is the new Satya Yuga coming in. So we have crossed through a whole evolutionary process of all the 4 yugas, and Mother and Sri Aurobindo have come us to deliver the new baby of the Supermind, to take us to usher humanity towards the new Satya Yuga. So in each level, of course, this Satya Yuga is not, the coming one is not the same as the past one. In the past, Satya Yuga was only Satya Yuga. It did not incorporate the physical, the vital and the mental. It was only the spiritual. But the new Satya Yuga is an incorporation, is a synthesis of the best of the mind, the vital and the physical. So now what we are going to get as Satya Yuga is the supramental age, where we will have a synthesis of the body, the heart, the psychic being and the mind. So this is the conjunction in evolution, not even in history, where the Mother and Sri Aurobindo have come. So friends, look at these 2 beings. At least in my personal, this is my personal view, you may take it or leave it or accept or not. But what I have understood personally is this, that the Mother and Sri Aurobindo have come at the end of the 4 yugas. So their coming, maybe we will not understand now. We are too close to history. And maybe because I have been with the Mother, I have taken her for granted. That's what Nalnida also writes. All of us have been so close to the Mother physically, have taken her for granted. I mean, when we could have used her as a ladder and climbed up to great heights, and some people in the ashram have done it, used her body as the ladder and climbed up to even to Supermind. But most people have not taken the advantage. We have lost time, we have lost consciousness, thinking, oh, she is there, fine, let me be busy with myself. But then later, when I read the Mother once again in my Auroville days and later, I read all that in my school days, higher course days, but the understanding comes later. And now, once this kind of dawned in me, and then I said, my God, with whom was I? Not a spiritual leader, not one more guru. There are thousands of them in India. I'm just coming from a conference in Italy where there was the Sarva Yoga International. There are people from Ramakrishna Mission, Shivananda Mission, Chinmayananda Mission, whatnot. There are all kinds of people there, all different ashrams represented. But when I spoke about Sri Aurobindo, it was a blasphemy. Because I went against all those gurus, what all they said about meditation, about this and that. I threw a bombshell and many of them didn't like it, especially the Swamis who were sitting in front of me. They're staring at me, oh, what a blasphemy, this young guy, not young, but younger to them maybe. But I was bold. I said, take it or leave it, this is Sri Aurobindo. I'm here to represent Sri Aurobindo. This is not my idea. So what I mean is, he's so far beyond. Sri Aurobindo and the Mother, we will not understand them. We cannot appreciate. We are too close to appreciate them. But mentally, this is my understanding. Inwardly, I'll take lives to grow into them. But at least I'm fortunate if I say, wow, that mother whom I touched, that mother who blessed me, that mother on whose feet I lay my head, is this supramental Marshal? Is that third absolute? I said, my mind got blasted. I said, it cannot be true. But that is the truth. So amongst you Aurovillian friends, I come just to tell you that we may challenge her sayings. We may challenge her saying she was there in her 60s, her opinion is different. We may challenge her saying her concept of Auroville was that, but I am the latest architect of 2012. I've been educated in Paris and Italy, and I come with the latest news. But friends, you know whom you are talking about, against whom you are challenging. Our heads should hang in shame even to question her. It is not religious fanaticism, please remember that. I would not get into fanaticism if I would have gotten into, but had I not understood who she is. Either this book is wrong or you are right. But I have my every atom of my body believes in this. So there is nobody who can question, who can put doubt and who can ask, hey, what did the Mother say after all? I said, shut up. You are after all, keep it with yourself. Because every thought, every cell in my body believes the truth of this. So there is no going back on that. So I am telling you, because you have been coming to the class for the past so many months, I can confide in you. So take me to be whatever you want me to be. You give me labels, you call it fundamental, fanatic. Yes, I am fanatic about the Mother. I am fundamental about this Mother. If my fundamentals are wrong, then I am sorry, go and correct Sri Aurobindo's fundamentals. So I stand by Sri Aurobindo and the Mother's fundamental principles. And all the controversies, mental labeling, freedom of speech, freedom of thought, freedom of expression, I blast them. Because for me, I have no freedom but only to quote, sometimes misquote, understand, misunderstand, only this. I have given up my freedom of speech, freedom of thought. And I am proud to have done that. Because that is my conscious surrender. That's my prayer. Mother, let me not think, let me not speak. Because I want to think only about you and talk only about you and tell only what you have said through me in my little understanding. Who am I? Can you imagine in this chart who you and me and all of us? Just an atom in this creation and we are challenging the Creator? And that's exactly what Mother wrote. If some of you have been to the Mother's room, even now if you go, where you are climbing down from the Mother's chamber, when you are climbing down, on the left side there is a big poster saying, do you want to correct what the Creator has done? That was such a slap, both sides of my cheek. Do you want to correct what the Creator has done? So what are we trying to do? Here an atom, and you see who this Mother is? And we take her lightly, saying that she is one of those creatures who has come, happened to have started Auroville, she is the mother. But, thanks friends, there is no but. There is no but. You may take it or leave it. You are rational people, you may think I am emotional, but this is the truth of my soul, and I will not budge from it. People may say anything, call me anything, but I am sold to this mother. And it is that I have come to convey, share. If you want to accept it, be with me. If you say, no, Ananda, you are too fanatic, that's a compliment. Because I would like to be fanatic about the mother, day in, day out, breathe her in and out every minute. Well, I think we have just finished the introduction. I hope you remember that, because once you understand who she is, I would say suspend your mind. Because the Vedas have told us, the Upanishads have told us, you cannot understand her with your mind. And Sri Aurobindo himself will write, I'll bring out that thing. He says, do not follow the mind with mother with your mind, follow her with your soul. So we know the truth, and let's try. Let's try with our inner being. That will be the real benefit of this class. If you think you are just coming for the sake of, just trying to know who the mother is, you'll never know her. But yes, these hours we can be with her. That's my prayer and invocation.